Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this slightly blustery but slightly brighter sunset safari. I don't think we'll have a sunset today, but it certainly will be an afternoon game drive for you. We are broadcasting live from the northeastern corner of South Africa, the iconic Kruger National Park, 2.2 million hectares, 5 million acres of wilderness wonderland. We're in a little section on the western fringes called Djuma and Arathusa. We also traverse off to the west of us over that away. My name is James Henry. On camera we have got Bryan, the thumb, Joubert. Beautiful thumb. It's a tree. It's a tree, everybody. It's a... What kind of tree, Bryan?
A pine tree.
A pine tree. Very nice. Exotic tree on Bryan's thumb today. Well done. Good job. On the other vehicle is going to be Jamie shortly, and she will be filmed by Jeandre Hopalong Kirsten. In the final control, Rebecca is talking to us in the ear and directing operations, and she's being ably assisted by Kirsten McLennan-Smith, who has recently had a bereavement of the pet in the family, so we're sorry about Kirsty hearing about the death of a family dog. And it's funny how distressing these things can be, even if it is an old age. And I know many of you are animal lovers, and so I felt I should just announce that because you will sympathize with her greatly, as do we all. Right, the plan this afternoon is to head towards Tingana. Now, Tingana apparently today was injured this morning, and this is a very sad state of affairs because, of course, a leopard that becomes injured is unable to survive if that injury stays, simply because they are unable to hunt if they are injured, and they are not very efficient scavengers, and nobody else is going to help them out. So we hope fervently that Tingana's injury does heal. Now, Billy, you were hoping for a wild dog experience. I'm afraid that's far more up to the wild dogs, unfortunately, than it is to us. They have such massive territories that unless they deign to grace us with their presence, the chances of us seeing them are very small indeed. Anyway, we are due a visit, like I said yesterday to a couple of the viewers. We are certainly due a visit in the next little while. It's been a while since they visited us, so we hope that they will come along soon. Anyway, that is the state of affairs. Now, by saying we are live, and some of you may be new viewers, you've heard Billy's already given us a comment, you might want to know how it is that Billy is able to talk to us. Well, we are live, and because of the incredibly clever people that run bits and pieces of the internet throughout the world, you can talk to us on Twitter, if you happen to be tweeting, like the yellow-billed hornbills we've just driven past. Hashtag SafariLIVE. Otherwise, you can email us questions at wildearth.tv. That's rapidly becoming as archaic as the fax machine, but please feel free to use it. Or you can use the YouTube chat stream, which works very well if you happen to be watching the YouTube stream. So that's how you can talk to us. And we do encourage you to talk to us if you are a new viewer and you don't know where we are, you don't know anything about South Africa or Africa, and you want to know, please don't feel ever like there's any question that you can't ask us, well, about South Africa and Africa, I mean, and the wildlife. we will do our level best to answer those questions. There is no reason for you to ever feel like a question about what we're seeing or about the general surrounds is too basic for us to answer. There are lots of people. If you have a question in your mind, chances are someone else does too. So just go for it. Send us a question on Twitter, on email, or on the YouTube chat stream. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Now, we are heading through an area not too far from what we call Treehouse Dam. That's over there. And Tingana may seek the refuge of water. However, because there is a lot of standing water at the moment between the dams, so a lot of what we call natural pans, where there's a sort of concentration of clay and natural depression in the earth that collects and holds water, the chances are he'll probably find some water quite close to where he was. I don't know why it is, but often animals that are injured seek out the water. And unfortunately, like I say, for a leopard or any other solitary animal, any other solitary predator that is, injury is something they have to avoid at just about all costs. And Christine, you're wondering how on earth he was injured, and I don't know. Nobody seems to know. Of course, he has been mating with Tundi for the last little while, and that is a particularly vigorous process, and it happens a lot. And every time he dismounts, in the 100 or so times that they will mate during the course of a 7-day courtship, she will attack him. She will turn around and take a swat at him. So it's quite possible that her claws got into him, and maybe that's what injured him. Ooh, there's a giraffe that I missed entirely. Let's have a look at the giraffe first. So I suspect it may well have been Tundi, unless they went off hunting together, and whatever they chased decided that they didn't really want to be killed by Tingana. There, everybody, is a beautiful giraffe cow. She was just looking over this way, looking slightly distressed. Of course, a giraffe normally looks slightly distressed. It's not like you can actually tell their facial expressions. So I thought maybe the leopard may have come up this way. But she seems to be eating a name. She seems to be eating again. You will have to excuse the audio today, everybody, I'm afraid. The microphone that I have is not very good in the wind, so I've had to kind of put it into my jersey. But when I stop, I will take it out again. Let me move back a little bit. We'll just keep an eye out here on the other side of the road, just in case Tingana isn't around here somewhere. We're not far from where he was last seen. And I'm definitely not going to try and follow this giraffe through this thick bush. All right, let's can this for a while. So that's lovely female giraffe. We don't see them as often as we think we might here, and I think it's quite odd. I don't see why the habitat wouldn't be optimal for them. And then sometimes they arrive and we see them for 5 or 6 days at a time. And then much like the wild dogs, they kind of wander off. Now, it was around here, around the pan over here, if I'm not mistaken, Bryan, that Tingana was, correct?
Yep.
There's a buffalo there. I can see the tracks where the vehicles went. So we'll just poke our noses in to where he was earlier today. We'll have a look at that beefalo. Was he just through here? We'll just ease our way around here. I'll show you the buffalo, and we'll see if the leopard... You see him? Sorry, Rebecca, you're going to have to go again with that. There are the buffalo, everybody. We're just going to have a quick look. Apparently, the final control is receiving beeps from my radio. I don't know why that is. I'm going to unplug it. I think the microphone is broken. Anyway, there is a buffalo bull who is enjoying the mud afforded by these pans. This is a pan, exactly what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Buffaloes love the pans. There we go. They love the mud. And they spend long days when it's hot lying in that mud. Now, they, of course, wouldn't tolerate a leopard if they saw one, but they wouldn't necessarily have seen Tingana, but standing where they are, they probably wouldn't have smelt him either, simply because the wind is coming from the southeast, and I think the leopard was seen to the north of where they are, which means the leopard will know that they are here, but they won't necessarily know that he's here. And you can see how they're watching us. Buffalo definitely see us as predators, and I'm constantly astounded by how often these buffalo bulls see us, and yet how often or how reticent they are to spend any time around us. They will often just turn away and walk off like this one does, and then look at us suspiciously, relieve themselves in full view, although I think that's just what they do. I don't think our presence here is resulting in him voiding his bladder. All right, Bryan, I think that's disgusting. Shall we go a little bit forward? So Bryan will guide me into where they had the leopard today, somewhere around here. He's pointing like a traffic officer. I can see the tracks of the other vehicles. So he may have moved a little, so we'll drive very carefully. What you don't want is to drive sort of past a thicket like this and suddenly find yourself within 2 or 3 meters of him, because then it's just awkward for him, especially if he's slightly injured. So we'll drive very carefully through here. And Rebecca, while we do this, if you wouldn't mind just telling me if we still have communications with you. In here. I'm afraid the communications are not good, everybody. I know that Heidi in Las Vegas has a question. What that question is, I'm afraid, is a greater mystery than the construction of the Easter Islands statues. Oh, right, okay. Now, Heidi, you want to know what the white stuff under the buffalo's eyes is, while we look scouring the undergrowth here for Tingana. Okay, so he was left directly in this bush in front of us. Heidi, the white stuff is skin that has been exposed. The fur has been removed from it. Ah, well done, Bryan. Bryan's got the leopard, everyone. That is a brilliant spot. That is seriously impressive. Well done, Bryan.
Thank you.
Let's just take a little moment to appreciate him there. And of course, because he's injured, we're going to give him a bit more space than we would normally. Not quite this much space, but we'll give him a bit of space. Heidi, so that skin is, it's just skin that has had the hair removed off it, normally by oxpeckers. All right, let's sneak our way a little bit further forward. So we're just going to ease our way through here, and I think we'll get a pretty good view of him. Doesn't seem to be hidden. Try not to knock my own head off while we go. Sorry, fella. I'm just going to stop here for now, everyone. Just give him a bit of chance to relax. I mean, we know we can drive pretty close to these leopards. They don't really mind. But you don't want to put pressure on an injured animal. You can see he's very happily resting. Although we don't know if he's feeling any pain. And if he is, what kind of pain that is, and how severe any injury might be. And I've no doubt, I think I have lost communications completely now with the final control, but I've no doubt that many of you will ask how it is that, or would we ever interfere here? Would we bring in a vet and say, you know, find out if there was anything that could be done? And the answer is almost an unequivocal no, for two reasons. Firstly, we do like to try and let nature take its course if we can. And secondly, normally these animals actually recover. It's quite astonishing how they manage to recover. Hello, Ravi. You're in New York City. It's been a while since I've heard from you, so thank you for your question. You say this morning that he was licking a wound, and does the saliva have any antiseptic properties? I have heard that it does, Ravi, and I think it makes sense that it would, simply because so many animals do it. We're even inclined to lick wounds when they get a little bit sore, or when there's, you know, when we bleed. So I think there probably are some antiseptic properties to the tongue or to the saliva. And certainly, I mean, the enzymes are designed to, you know, digest various kinds of, in the saliva, designed to digest various kinds of food. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of those enzymes were able to digest the bacteria or little pathogens that get into a cut. Okay, I'm going to move again. He seems to have got pretty relaxed around us. Not that he isn't always, but like I say, just giving him a bit of space. And we'll just try and ease our way into this little gap here. Without making too much noise. It's quite difficult not to make any noise. So Monty, just along the lines of what I was sort of preempting, you want to know if we would ever dart him to check on his injuries? And the answer, Monty, is no. The leopard in this particular part of the world is not endangered. And while they are possibly threatened throughout their range, because they are not endangered in this particular part of the world, because of the complications of dealing with an animal that is darted, and because of the fact that there are, you know, normally 3 or 4 other males ready to take his place, if this injury was a naturally occurring one, then he would be left, I'm afraid, to his fate. And I suspect that's what will happen. But we don't know the extent of the injury. And like I say, so often animals look like they are going to be on their very last legs, and they somehow recover. And that's another very good reason not to interfere. And that is because when you do, you often upset the balance, and you often actually create more trouble for the animal than you do good. And the example I often use is of a monkey that I used to watch every so often. I used to live up in a place called Palabora, which is a dubious and, in fact, foul place just north of Hoedspruit, but it does have quite a nice golf course on it, and on the golf course lived this troop of monkeys, and one of the males in the troop had only 2 limbs, or only 2 functional limbs, one broken off foot, or one dangling foot, sort of dangling at the ankle joint, and one missing arm. And you would have thought that that monkey would have died very soon after sustaining those injuries, but he didn't. He was absolutely fine. You could find him running along the 5th fairway on just 2 limbs. It was quite astonishing to behold. I, of course, was very seldom on the 5th fairway. I was normally in the rough. Anyway, Tingana is now having a good wrist. And just to keep you posted, the other vehicle is not up and running. This is unsurprising. It was on Cheetah Plains today doing tests, so we are making progress there. The tower is up, the repeat is up there, the solar panels are there, charging the various bits and pieces of utterly incomprehensibly complicated technical stuff that's going to be put there. And so, with any luck, within a week or so, we will be traversing Cheetah Plains, marveling at the gabbro plains of grasses. Herds of cheetah stream across them, chasing all manner of antelope. Anyway, we're not going to spend too long here, everybody. Not because I think we're disturbing him, but because he's not doing very much. And so we might head off and see what else we can find in the next little while. So let's spend 10 minutes with him. And after that, we'll head to Treehouse Dam. And on from there, probably to the far east. Hello, R. Beard. I'm going to phrase your question exactly the way you put it, largely because I would be quite afraid to, put it that way were it my own question. But so everybody, R. Beard's question, and I quote here, would the female, if she made a kill, allow Tingana to approach it and share it, or is she, and here I do quote, an ungrateful lover? R. Beard, she wouldn't actually be faced with a choice. He is much bigger than she is, and if there was food to be had, he would simply steal it from her. He would just scavenge it from her. He wouldn't ask her permission. She wouldn't have much choice. She'd be taking an enormous risk trying to defend a kill from him, but he would probably happily share it with her, relatively happily. He wouldn't try and take it, or, if it was large enough, he'd eat from one side and she would eat from the other side, simply because he's bigger than her. But, in his current injured state, maybe he would struggle to take it from her. I suspect, though, because leopards are so averse to taking physical risks, she would probably just simply move off a little bit if he came towards a kill. He probably wouldn't actually have to engage her physically. So I think that's probably what would happen, R. Beard. I don't think she's a necessarily ungrateful lover at all, but we'd have to ask her that the next time we see her. All right, let's head across to Jamie. She is up and running with Rusty. We'll get an update from her, and I'll see you back here in a little while.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. I'm just chuckling at Jeandre's amazingly well-timed sneeze there. But yes, welcome. It's not the Sunrise Safari either, it's the Sunset Safari. But somehow this rushed start has had us both running around like chickens without heads. The vehicle that we're on at the moment went off on a little field trip to Cheetah Plains and arrived back it felt like 5 minutes ago. It was probably about 10 minutes ago. But we did then have to have a mad rush to get ready and forgot a couple of rather crucial and important things that we then had to race back towards. And in all of this drama, I was watching an elephant somewhere around here, and I've lost him. I was watching through from DRC. Here we go. Jeandre has spotted him. Let's go and see if it's the bull that's been causing all of this drama with the elephant herd. Oh, no, it's an elephant herd. Never mind. Definitely not a bull. So this morning, James called me on the Game Drive channel. He was out on tracking team, and he was on foot looking for the Nkuhumas in that block where things vanish, that sort of Bermuda Triangle of Djuma. And we strongly suspect that the Nkuhumas are still there somewhere. Oh, look, it's Fang. How lovely. Haven't seen her in a while. With that backwards-facing tusk. This is, for those of you who've been watching the Djuma Dam camera, Fang's herd is particularly large. We've seen her, last time I saw her was probably around January, maybe December. I'm not 100% sure. But that is just a pure growth defect. And if we do manage to get a closer look at her, you'll actually be able to see where that tusk has been damaged. And there's a little bit of normal tusk sticking up the right way. And then you've got that incredible downward curve. And they've also, this is quite a fascinating herd. There's a female in this herd with a very floppy ear. Let's actually go around. They're going to come down to the power lines. We'll go there. There's a female with a very flopped ear, sort of a damaged cartilage. There's a female with 2 floppy ears, if I remember correctly. And Fang's herd is quite a large herd. They're very much on the move. Let's see if we can't catch up with them. So I was talking about James and the Bermuda Triangle, the Gallagher Triangle, that blocks sort of to the north of the camps, where it's a network of river-like systems, drainage line systems, that interlock and interweave, and finding anything in that block can be very tricky. It's very dense. And he was on foot and he called me to say that he had never heard elephants, direct quote on the Game Drive channel, never heard elephants go berserk like that. Hello, girl. Last time I saw Fang's herd, if I'm not mistaken, we were sitting near some quite dense vegetation, and there was a tiny, tiny little baby elephant that was sleeping, being protected by Fang and the rest of the females in the herd. They were all standing around this little thing as it was having its mid-morning nap. And it's incredible to see when she turns her head. Have a look at that right tusk that is downward facing. There is a groove there where it would normally be in completely the other position on a normal facing tusk, but you can see how she's adapted to use that strange tusk in a completely different way to other elephants. Hello, lovely girl. Our beard, just looking at her, it's something that can be quite strange to see on an elephant like this, and definitely quite a jarring sighting if you're not used to it. It's actually, I wouldn't call it common, but I have seen a couple of examples like this, and you were wondering what causes this backward-facing tusk. Is there any other reason other than a birth defect? Yes, an injury could have caused it. So if, for example, during the growth of that tusk, and it would have had to have occurred when she was quite young, perhaps she bashed it, she cracked it, and it caused that little growth defect. Now, there's another female on this reserve with a tusk like this, but she's got, and it's not Fang, sorry, I was mistaken, she's actually got 2 tusks sticking out where the damage has been done. One tiny little one that looks normal, and then one backward-facing one that pokes back towards her legs. And it's interesting watching Fang, because as she moves along, she actually changes the direction of her head ever so slightly so that that tusk doesn't rub constantly on her leg. It could have been a birth defect. It could have been an existing crack or weakness in the tooth, just like some human beings have cracked or weak teeth that then came through as this. It's something that we've seen at least 3 different females with this kind of tusk before. Let's go forward a little bit, see if we can't spot the little one that was in her herd when I last saw them, and see how much it's grown in the few months that we haven't seen them. The nice thing about being up in an area like this is that, so we're open to the Kruger. The animals have about 4 million hectares of area that they can wander through, and they can cross without facing any barriers except for natural ones. And yet we do get to know the individual characters, the individual herds. They have home ranges and they have not territories. Elephants are not territorial beings. They do have areas that they prefer to move about in. The little calf is at the back there. It's not the one on the right. There's actually one in front of that there. The little back is showing. Oh, stretch, little one. There's the baby. Head sticking out on the right of that stick. A day like today, with wind howling, it's always important to remember to give the elephants plenty of personal space. This kind of weather does seem to upset them ever so slightly. Oh. Shenanigans. Also, the other thing about Fang's herd is that it's home to quite a few very large females. Hello, big girl. Was it you guys that were so stressed out this morning with James? We suspected that it was to do with the presence of a large elephant bull in must, but you never know. We've seen elephants react very strongly to the presence, for example, of wild dogs. And James is quite convinced that that is where the Nkahuma lions are hiding, and that's why the elephants were so upset. I mentioned that at least 3 of our elephants that I have seen have got this backward-facing tusk. And Deborah, you were wondering if perhaps all 3 of them were related, so a kind of genetic defect. It's distinctly possible. I mean, elephant herds in an area... Sorry, Jeandre, I'm just going to take my foot off the brake. This is my fault. Shifting back a bit. Elephant herds within an area, you'll probably find that if you go far enough back in their history, they are related to each other in some way. Sometimes when elephant herds get too large, they split off into smaller groups. Sometimes females move off on their own with their calves. So it could be. I'm not discounting it. As I said, elephants like to move about in, if not the same areas, they certainly have regular paths. There you go, you can see that groove perfectly at the tip from where she's used it to slide through the branches or to break through branches and various twigs, and has eventually worn away at a groove. And what's fascinating about that is that her left tusk doesn't have one at all, which means that she is right tusk, or she's most likely right tusk dominant. It could also be how she acquired the injury to this tusk. These are her permanent tusks, so they will be with her for the rest of her life. And of course, they are in sizes. They're modified teeth. That is what an elephant tusk is. So this will continue to be, they only have... All right, girl. What's got you so upset? Maybe a fly or just a little bit of dust around her. That wasn't a head shake, really, a tusk. Her tusk will never, ever right itself. It will always be growing in that direction. It will never be replaced. Unlike their molars, they go through 6 sets of molars throughout their lives. The elephant tusks stay permanently and continue to grow throughout their lives. But Rob, I know you were wondering, do elephant babies have milk tusks? Hello, girl. Oh, I love that feeling. All right. You just stay here. You will watch your beautiful family. That was such a beautiful, deep rumble contact call. And now we have a baby elephant trying to climb a termite mound. Sorry, Jeandre. At the back there. Or he was trying to climb the termite mound. He's stretching up. He's trying to use the termite mound as leverage. But just while we are looking at that baby, yes, Rob, they do have milk tusks, just like we have milk teeth. It's very common for them not to be visible outside of the skin. They don't always get big enough to be visible. And then at about 3 years old, they start to grow their big tusks, their permanent tusks. So the baby at the back will have milk tusks developing there that they will then lose and start growing their permanent tusks like the little one in front is doing. Just been watching this female tuck into a marula tree that's already been considerably mangled by elephants in the past. It definitely doesn't have the sort of standard growth form. And Tony, you were wondering, while we watch her feed, what elephants use their tusks for. Their predominant use, particularly within breeding herd, is feeding. So one use would be to gouge into the bark of a tree in order to strip through to the cambium layer where all the nutrients and the sugars lie. So that will be one use that they would put them to. They also use them to help sort of in combination with their trunks to snap twigs and branches and leaf litter and even grass at times to make it easier to pull it into its mouth. And bear with me 1 second, Tony. I haven't finished, but James would like to chat to me. He stopped calling me pajamas, which I'm quite disappointed about. Standing by. I have no idea why he was calling me pajamas. I'm on power lines at the moment with Jamie and Jeandre. I'm not quite sure where I'll go from there. James, I'll probably check in at Arethusa. Tony, tusk use? Sorry about that, by the way. James just wanted to know which way I was going to go so that we don't necessarily end up checking the same areas. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Now, it is amazing to see the differences in the shape of the tusks, but for the most part, they're a fairly uniform shape. And they can be used for fighting as well and for defense, both for the females and for the males, more so by the males. If competing for mates. There's another little baby at the back there. Tiny little one hiding behind that sharp, pointy tusked elephants. And on the subject of, and I mean this one little one is far too young to even think about tusks at this point. This is the little baby. When we first saw it, it was only a few days old. Oh, so cute. I disagree with James. James says a lion cub is the cutest thing out here. A baby lion. I think baby elephants are the cutest, I'm afraid to say. There's just such an inquisitive mind there as this little female sticks her trunk into the mouth of her friend, because that's where the best smells are. Looks like a cousin, a boy cousin, that she's playing with. Oh. And you, little boy, you look as though you're full of mischief. And just to finish off our subject of tusks and using them for fighting, etc. Carol, you were just wondering whether or not, or whether I've ever seen a male elephant with a backward-facing tusk, because you were thinking perhaps it would disadvantage the male in terms of being able to fight for females. And no, I haven't seen lots and lots of males with broken tusks, but I've never seen one curved all the way backwards. This is such a lovely, peaceful sighting. Now, the other genetic defect that you do find within elephant herds is that about, roughly, on average, 4% of elephants are born without tusks completely. And Tony, you've read that elephants have started breeding with males without tusks in order to help prevent the poaching problem. And you were wondering if that was true. The answer is no, it's not true. It's not a deliberate decision on their part. But you have absolutely got the facts right in that there has been, in the last, for example, in one area in Central Africa, the percentage of tuskless elephants in a population went from 4% to close to 40% in 30 years. And that's because the elephants with tusks are killed, leaving behind only those, or leaving behind a far higher percentage than would normally naturally occur without tusks. And then that obviously basically is it's artificial selection. It is selecting for that gene without tusks. So yes, it is true, but it's not a deliberate decision on the part of the elephants. They haven't actively thought through the problem and decided to breed with males that do not have tusks. Do I think that they are incapable of that type of learning? Might be a little bit of a stretch. I think elephants are very clever, but I think that would be a little bit too complicated for them. That being said, they are tremendously powerful and intelligent animals, and they are capable of the most incredible thought. Now, we're sitting close to an enormous herd. I mentioned that Fang's herd is quite large. There's just elephants for days in front of me, not all of them visible. Sometimes I just get the slightest glimpse of a black shape moving behind the bushes. But Ravi has said that it's amazing how such an animal of this size and strength can transmit the feeling of such serenity. And you were wondering if I feel the same. Absolutely. There is nothing that I enjoy more than spending time with these incredible animals. There is a serenity. There is also a feeling of awe. There is a feeling of appreciation and gratefulness from my side. And a whole load of various emotions that one feels when sitting with an elephant herd. And you were wondering what contributes to that. I think a lot of things. I think our burgeoning understanding of how incredibly intelligent elephants really are. That, and combined with the fact that you can hear their rumbles of communication. And most importantly, in my experience, when you look into their eyes, when they walk right up close to you and they look down at you with those big brown eyes framed by the most gorgeous eyelashes, and you're so aware of the fact that this animal is about 3-4 times the weight of you plus the vehicle and could do whatever it wants to you. But you stop and you look at them, and they really look at you. They don't look at the vehicle, they don't look past you, or they don't look at... There's no other animal in the world that looks at you like an elephant looks at you, in my personal opinion. Maybe whales do. I've never had a close enough encounter with them, and maybe great apes do. But certainly for me, that is what makes experiences with elephants so special. I'm actually going to stay with them, and I would love to hear what emotions you guys feel when you sit and watch elephants. Send those through to #SafariLIVE on Twitter, or email them through to questions@wildearth.tv. And let's find out from James what he's up to.
We are back up and running, everybody. We had to run home quickly to get a new microphone for our radio, but we can now hear Rebecca with crystal clarity, and we've come across a mixed herd of herbivores here on quarantine clearings. And the mixed herd of herbivores is not only the 2 zebra you can see, and the impala, or 3 zebra also, and the impala. Bryan, there's another much smaller herbivore, isn't there, covering all of the trees here. And if we look at some of the trees, you can see that the termites have started to eat away the outer bark. Normally, I said the other day when we spotted it that it wasn't affecting the marula trees. That's not true. That is a marula tree. It is being affected, but not nearly as badly as the silver cluster leaves are being affected. And Bryan will just go across to one of those now. And we don't really know why that is, why it should be that suddenly all of these trees are being covered up by termites. It is very odd indeed. That whole trunk there, that brownish color that you can see behind that impala that's looking a bit freaked out, is covered in a little piece of termite mound. And It's very odd indeed. Can't really explain it. Safe to say that perhaps it's a function of the fact that most of the vegetation on the clearing here is actually quite dry, wet. And of course, termites prefer dead and dying plant material. So that is quite interesting. And it is the fungus-growing termite. And of course, what they do is they build these coverings on the trees so that they can work during the day. During the nighttime, of course, they can work without this sort of the sun, but during the day they like to have that covering because they're very sun sensitive, and they also will be protected sort of from their predators. So I mean, a hornbill, while it could easily tap away that sandy covering, it was unlikely to do so because it doesn't know how deep the termites are. So quite interesting stuff going on here. And of course, as we know, despite the fact we're watching those much larger herbivores eating away at the fresh grass on here on quarantine clearings, the total mass of termites in an area is normally much greater than the combined mass of all the other herbivores. I'm going to say that again. The termites in an area, so let's take this area as quarantine clearings, have a greater combined mass than the combined mass of all the other herbivores. Now, what that means is that on an area like Djuma, the elephants, the buffalo, the impala, the zebra, the kudu, the nyala, the bushbuck, the wildebeest, the waterbuck, all of them have a combined mass lower than the combined mass of all of the termites in this area. Now, that to me is absolutely astonishing when you consider that the mass of an elephant bull is 6 tons, and these termites, can you imagine how many termites must have to make up the mass of just one elephant bull? Millions. And that's how many termites there are. So they are a crucial part of the ecosystem, and that's why when I hear of people often in North America, of course, they eat your homes because a lot of you still build with wood. When I hear about termites being poisoned, I really get very upset indeed, because they are such a completely important part of any ecosystem. Same with the ants and same with all the insects. And the new fun fact that I learned the other day, of course, which I've now, this will be the 3rd time I'm going to tell you, see if I can remember the numbers. There are so many insects around, and one of the great sort of ways of describing it is this, the edible nest swift. Now, the edible nest swift lives in a colony of about 11.5 million, if I'm not incorrect. I think it was about 11.5 million. They together eat a total of 1,680 tons of insects a year. Now, without them, can you imagine how many insects there would be? But it just gives you an idea of the number of insects and invertebrates around the place and the number of animals that they are supporting themselves. Now, Shelley, you want to know if they will affect the trees. Well, they're living trees, so I don't think so. And a silver cluster leaf, I think, is known to be termite resistant. So I don't really necessarily think that the termites are going to kill the trees, but they're definitely going to make a dent, I'm sure. I mean, they can't be there just for the sake of it. They must be there eating. But why they're doing it, I don't know. This will be a good tree to check on. We'll see it every so often. This is the one I pointed out the other day. It's an apple leaf tree, and you can see there how the termites are building a protective covering up the top, and they'll be eating away underneath that. So we'll see over the next little while what happens to the tree. Maybe it's just the dead bits, like that branch that's sticking up there, that will be eaten. But as I say, if I look around me now, you know, it's all green. All of the vegetation at the moment is green. There's very little in the way of dry wood. And what's interesting, I mean, we didn't do a fireside chat for what, Bryan, about 4 weeks? Yeah. And when we got back to the fireside chat after the big cat week, we found that the entire log, now it's a massive, massive log that we'd been sitting on for the best part of last year, had been devoured completely away. Just amazing. And so I don't think there's much dry wood left for the termites to eat. Right, our plan from here is to head back towards Tingana. I don't think we're going to go and look at him right now, but there was that giraffe that we saw, and on our way out of that sighting, the giraffe looked like it was looking extremely intently into the block. Now, that area, of course, is quite close to where Karula's been last seen. Maybe she's brought her cubs across, I don't know, but I think it's worth going to have a look. Tandi might be around that area too, so let's go and stick our noses in there and see what we can find. Unfortunately, we had to rush back to get a new microphone for the radio, and so that's why we didn't just investigate straight away, but we might be lucky. Now, the particular area in which Tingana is, and Tandi was, is the southern reaches of Djuma, central southern reaches, and that means that pretty much on the border of Karula's, the southern border of Karula's territory as well. Karula's territory can be most obviously shown by a map of Djuma, pretty much the whole of Djuma. Now, Virginia, we were chatting about Tingana a little bit earlier, and we were talking about the injury that he has and the fact that he's going to struggle to eat, and you would like to sort of further that discussion by asking whether or not I think he will stay in the area that he's in now and whether or not he will try and hunt. And Virginia, it very much depends on the extent of the injury. From what I can gather from Bryan, he's unlikely to do any hunting for the next 24 hours or so. Would you say, Bryan? Now, whether or not he recovers sufficiently to hunt after that, I don't know. And it will depend on how much pain there is. He will push himself, obviously, to the nth degree. The animal's survival instincts out here are extremely powerful. So even if he is limping, he may well try and hunt. But obviously, the chances of him catching anything are going to be that much smaller. Do I think he'll stay in that area? Yes, I do, unless he is disturbed. So, I mean, he's quite close to those buffalo. They may well start grazing through the area where he is, and if they do that, they might disturb him, in which case he'll kind of move off. He's going to struggle to climb a tree, I think, if the injury is as bad as it sounds. So I think he will try and keep low under that bush until he feels a little bit better. It is amazing, like I say, though, how quickly animals out here are able to recover from seemingly horrendous injuries. Right, the game drive radio's going in my head. Ah, there we go. Okay. Lots of elephants around, as Jamie has shown you. And the other thing that we might go and do a bit later is have a look and see if we can't see some tracks of the Nkuhuma pride. This morning I went for a walk, and I was walking in the block, and for those of you who have a map, in between what is Mvubu Road and Gallagher Shortcut, there are those buffalo now in front of us, quite interestingly. We'll go and have a look at them again. And you can actually get a map. If you go to Google Maps, the Djuma roads are actually all named there, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a large block that's very difficult to get into in a vehicle, and because we hadn't seen the lion tracks coming out of that block, I assumed maybe they were in there. And I walked in, and I could hear some elephants rumbling, and then eventually I got to the sort of banks of the fairly steep drainage line, and it was a whole herd of buffalo. Eventually, the elephants went ballistic. They started screaming, and for about 15 minutes they didn't stop shouting, trumpeting, screaming, running around, crashing over bushes. What they were doing, I don't know. There may have been a bull there. It must, perhaps. It may also have been that they discovered the Nkuhuma pride, but there were too many of them there for me to get in there on foot, so I don't know. We might go and have a look there a bit later. Now, this is wonderful, because they're not alone, these buffalo, are they, Bryan?
No.
Who is with them?
That's Piggy.
A piggy, yes. A terrified piggy that has run away. There's a whole breeding herd here. Looks to me like these are the pathfinders. So these will be the front sort of vanguard or point of the buffalo herd, and they look like they're going to be heading towards Treehouse Dam, which isn't too far from here. So that's what I think's going on here. And we're just going to sit here for a while, because they do seem to be grazing this way. And the best way to view buffalo is patiently wait for them to come towards you, as these ones are doing. They're kind of perpendicular to the wind, which means that they won't be smelling us now. But if they come to the right-hand side of your screen, if they keep coming along that way, they will pick us up. And it's interesting because a buffalo has excellent eyesight. They can see us completely. They know exactly what we are. Or maybe they don't, because as soon as the wind changes and blows towards them, you'll see them look up. As soon as they smell human, perhaps it's Bryan's shampoo. He keeps his golden locks in a very fine state indeed, unlike Jeandre, who seems to be trying to cultivate some kind of bacteria-infested dreadlock. He won't mind me saying that to him. I've said it to his face. But I think that this smell of our soaps and the smell of our washing powders and that sort of thing, and our just simple human smell affects them quite deeply, and they don't like it. And that buffalo there is trying to gain some sense of what our intentions are. He's trying to pick up pheromones. He's opening up the tract to the vemeronasal organ, and that will help him to interpret any pheromones that there are in the air. He may also, of course, be testing that female in front of him to see if she's an estrus. In fact, that's probably far more likely. Yes, he is now smelling the ground where she has been. He has amorous intent. Yes, that's why you're chewing on that grass like Tom Sawyer, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Trying to look nonchalant, when actually his heart is all of a flutter. She is now standing, of course, to one side, pretending not to look at him. But no, as he looked up, she looked away, and now she's playing hard to get. Off she goes. Now he's watching her go. And now he's looking depressed. Bryan, it's happened again. The names that we give, that people give themselves on the internet are fantastic. And we have a question coming through from Majus Major. Majus Major, I can't begin to imagine where your name comes from, but thank you for your query. Your query is that you've heard that buffalo are the most bad-tempered animals in all of Africa. Now, I don't believe this to be true. I think that the most badly tempered animal in Africa is probably Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, followed closely by some of the directors here who, when you don't do what they tell them, then they get very cross indeed. I'm going to continue the story about the buffalo because it's quite a long one that I want to tell you, my juice major. But before we do that, let's pop across quickly to Jamie. She's about to lose those elephants.
This is such a beautiful atmospheric moment with this herd of elephants slowly making their way across the main access road and into some very dense vegetation. That's why I wanted you to just have some last glimpses of them before they do disappear. I'm just sitting, listening to the gentle rumbles of the elephants around me. And Gracie has answered my question about how the elephants make her feel. And that she tells me that they make her feel all tingly inside and takes away the unhappiness and makes her feel happy. And Gracie, please don't ever feel as if you can't ask your questions. I've never, ever thought any of your questions are silly at all. Promise you, send us all the questions you want to know. We never think they're silly, and nobody out here will ever think that. Look who we've got sitting on our right. Gracie, if I'll tell you a secret, your questions are some of my favorite questions that I've ever got, ever. And not just when I've been doing these live safaris, but in all the time that I have been guiding people and taking them out on safari. We've been seeing the elephants enjoying far more grass recently, which is such a pleasure to witness. And I'm sorry, I have to take you away from Fang and across to what's happening in the road in front of me. We'll go back to their feeding habits in a second. She's very vocal, Fang. She's just constantly rumbling next to me, and yet she's always quite far away from the rest of the herd. It's interesting. She's heading across to join them. Young males up ahead of us have been having a wonderful game of, first of all, trash the road, and second of all, push each other about. I think the calves at the back all involved in a bit of a tussle. Can't quite tell where one elephant begins and one elephant ends. Oh, this is where elephants are so entertaining in this kind of weather, because it's cool. So they can play happily without getting too hot. Look at the dust flying. A little one right at the back that keeps trying to intervene and can't really keep up with the bigger cousins. There goes Fang, off to join the rest of the herd, immediately causing a ceasefire with the younger males. Oh no, maybe not. Whenever I see an elephant like Fang, of her age, and I mean, I would guess she's over 30 years old, I can't help but imagine all of the things she has seen and done and the miles those feet have covered. Maybe that's what gives an elephant such wisdom and tolerance, as she chucks some dust over her shoulder, completely, for now, ignoring the juvenile occupations of the little ones in front of her. Isn't this beautiful? Oh, just don't go running into her. She won't be impressed with you. And just like that, they stop as Fang guides them, or at least tries to squeeze past them. The little one's still going at it. Hey Fang, have you got a teenage roadblock in front of you? Oh, moments like this are so special. Now, funnily enough, looking at these elephants, they are so... Oh, what's that little one doing? What are you doing? Did you fall over? Did fall over at the back of the bushes there. Oh, up we go. Oh, dash across the road. Take the opportunity quick before you get embroiled in the clash of tusks. Oh, this is so exciting. Everybody's playing. I want to play too, but I'm a little bit small. Oh, you look about the right size. Let me try it with you. Oh, you are a little bit much. You're too big. All right, back to Mum. No, but I kind of want to be involved in the game. Oh, I can't. Oh, there we go. Found a buddy of the right size. Sometimes I just really enjoy these long-distance views of the elephants, because you really get to watch all that is going on around you. And Fang just walked. She just kept walking. Oh, somebody's now down on the ground. Tail out at 90 degrees for that little one. Whoop, whoop. Chaos here. It's such a wonderful thing being an elephant calf. Everybody's there to protect you. You've got cousins to play with you. You know that you're safe in the heart of the herd. And you've got all that wisdom, all those babysitters, and all that entertainment on tap. The life of a little elephant is a wonderful thing. Oh, somebody's lying down. Out for the count. Back up again. Let's go a little bit closer. This is just too special to miss. But yes, one of the most unique animals as we drive through, their closest relative, most bizarrely, is a small animal known as a rock hyrax. And we have a question about how they are closely, if I can explain how that is the case. I'll show you a picture of a rock hyrax once the sighting is over. But Leapad, you were wondering about the relationship between hyraxes, shrews, and elephants. Start with hyraxes and elephants. Their foot structure is identical. The tip of the toe, sitting on a cushioned pad, is very, very similar. The elephants have left a nice little stick that might want to get stuck under my car. Their nipples are between their front legs. Their teeth structure is almost identical with the ridges along the molars. And I cannot remember the other one. Oh, goodness, I'm having a moment. I'm drawing a blank. I will get back to you on that. But that genetically is where the connection stems in terms of common ancestry. Now, shrews, on the other hand, shrews, it's got that extended proboscis that links them in terms of evolutionary similarity. Cute. Elephants are being incredibly entertaining. Oh, little babies all dashing about on the road. As they wander off along the road, it's oopsie daisy, speed wobble. Okay, let me send you back over to James, find out what he's up to.
Right, the buffalo seem to have taken offense to us and turned round and seem to be going the other way. Now, Majus Major, whose name is my new favorite on Twitter, you have heard that buffalo are the most bad-tempered of all animals in Africa. I gave you at least 2 examples of more bad-tempered animals, but what you must understand is that a lot of the buffalo's reputation comes from the fact that, as with most bad-tempered animals, people have been hunting them for so long. Now, a buffalo, like most animals in the world, becomes very upset when you try and shoot it. And that has given rise to this kind of fallacy that a buffalo is an extremely bad-tempered animal. Yes, a buffalo bull can be a bit cantankerous. If you give them a fright and you corner them, yes, then they can be quite potentially dangerous. But I have walked within the distance that we are from these buffalo now, which is probably about 25 or 20 meters, which is about 70 feet. I've walked this close to buffalo by mistake, not seeing them, turned and seen them, and they've just sat there and grazed and looked at me. Elephants you can't get that close to. Lions will run away, definitely. Even rhino, if you're walking on foot and they find you that close to them, if they suddenly become aware of you, very seldom will they just sit still, either run towards you or run away. But a buffalo, if you take enough time, will allow you to get relatively close without worrying too much about it. And so a lot of the bad reputations that any animal around the world have largely to do with the fact that they are hunted by human beings. And many of the stories of buffalo being nasty to people are because the people are actually being fairly nasty to the buffalo long before the buffalo's thought of taking any kind of aggressive action. Right, back to the Ellies quickly. They're having a great time.
Cars, there we go. This is incredible. Now, this is a main access road, so that's why there are cars attempting to get past this pile of elephants. Oh, this is too amazing. Oh, up we get again. There were about 5 elephants there at one point, all climbing on top of each other. Just having the most amazing time. And just imagine being the occupants of those vehicles. And they could well be guests arriving to Voyatella and Galago, the lodges here. And they must be so excited for the prospects ahead. And of course, baby elephants or young elephants, much more limber than the adults. Oh goodness, this is just such a special sighting. Don't disappear, Ellies. Keep playing in front of us. Beautiful. There's just elephants everywhere. Hello, girl. Hello, beautiful. Such a peaceful, magical sighting this has been. We've got lots and lots of youngsters in this breeding herd, which is why we've got so many careering all around. And Sarah was wondering if there is a particular season that favors elephant births or if they are all year round. The answer is, Sarah, generally they are all year round, with a slight peak around the rainy season. As she munches away on her sickle bush. So yes, all year round with a peak in the rainy season. However, there is a lot of research being conducted into the impact that droughts have on the elephant birth rate after the drought has ended. And the fact that the population tends to recover itself really amazingly when little ones have been caught by the ravages of the drought. And Tony, just quickly on that sort of subject, it's quite similar. You wanted to know about, sorry Sarah, that was your question, but Tony, you wanted to know about the different types of feeding, what an elephant's favorite food is. And she was just currently munching on one of their favorite foods, a sickle bush. She's now moved on to one of the acacias, but it's very much seasonally dependent. So in summer, in the wet season, they do like to eat as much grass as possible. It's soft, it's delicious, it's full of nutrients. In winter, they'll tend to favor the different types of trees. But Tony, what will be the most interesting in terms of watching the impact that this drought has over the next few months is to see if it changes the way in which elephants feed and which species they tend to favor. Let's go forward a little bit and I'll explain what I mean. Oh, more elephants. There's just elephants everywhere. And they just look so enormous when compared to that little white car. All right, I think we've lost most of our ellies to some very dense vegetation, and I'm going to have to make space for... Oh, I love that sound. I'm going to have to make space at some point for the other vehicles to come through. This is such a peaceful herd, though. Hello, big girl. Whoops. That was a baby. The game's just got a little bit too out of hand there. That was so funny. As I said, that was a peaceful sighting. All of a sudden they started chirping and screaming. I'll tell you exactly what happened from what I could hear. The female rumbled to discipline or to stop the young calves from what they were doing. They were obviously getting a bit rough. Maybe even one of the babies was starting to feel a bit bullied. And as a result, the female actually stepped into discipline, and the scream that you heard was from one of the babies. That isn't it incredible, the wide range of vocalizations that we get. Now I'm going to move backwards a little bit so that these guys can come past us. I'm going to try and find a suitable spot to move off the road. Unfortunately, I think that spells the end of our elephant sighting as they all went dashing off into the bushes. That had nothing to do with us, by the way. Absolutely nothing. But it is very important to be aware of elephant behavior, to be respectful of their personal space, as we always talk about with them. There's still elephants coming through, but I am just going to move off the road. And it's important to realize that whilst that might not have been our fault, it is certainly important to realize that they're now a little bit upset. Oopsie. Oh, there's the droopy-eared one. Oh, she's at the back there. Let me just let this vehicle go past us. And one more to go. I've been looking for that droopy-eared female the whole time. Right, shall we continue onwards? That, by the way, those were not guests. That was our team that's currently involved in putting up the mast on Cheetah Plains. So that is who that was. But if they had been guests, that would have been an extraordinary way to start off their holiday. But we do have a question, and it's an important question, about whether guests are ever given instructions as to how to handle moments like these when they are making their way towards the lodge along main access roads. And I'm so sad that floppy-eared elephant was so much further ahead. And the answer to that is no, not necessarily. Most of the guests that self-drive themselves into the park are South Africans. South Africans tending to have quite a large amount of experience, generally a large amount of experience within places like the Kruger Park. And the Kruger Park does provide very, very clear guidelines about how to handle elephant situations and what to do and how to treat the animals with respect. And then any international guests that perhaps might not have that knowledge base will be sent through with a driver. We've just missed our floppy-eared elephant. But the nice thing is that this elephant herd will probably stick around here. They should stick around in the area for the next few days. Sarah, just to go back to your question, we got sort of interrupted, kind of. We did pretty much finish it, but you were wondering about the peak season. And as I said, there is an increase in elephant births once a drought is ended. It's a way of helping them recover from the ravages of the drought itself. There you go, our elephants, I think, I mean, it's an enormous herd, but I think that is the last of them. They've moved off into this block. They love this Aubrey's Road area, sort of between Gallagher Shortcut and Aubrey's. I said that I really wanted to see the droopy-eared elephant, and Deanna was just wondering, am I worried about that elephant? Could it be an injury? Might have been an injury, most likely because it's symmetrical on both sides. She sort of looks like a puppy dog with floppy ears. Most likely it was a birth defect similar to the backwards-facing tusk. And no, I'm not concerned really at all about her. I'm fairly certain that she is, disappearing. Steph, who's watching in Belgium, was wondering whether there's ever a specific time when the elephants move out of the Kruger Park into the Greater Kruger Park. And Steph, just bear with me. I'm going to take my jacket off as I answer you because for the first time in a day, I'm actually warm. Steph, the Greater Kruger Park and the Kruger Park are all open to each other, as you know. The Greater Kruger Park, of course, referring to the greater conservancies, the open boundaries within the Sabi Sands, the Manuletti, the Timbavati. And no, there isn't really a specific time of year that they will move out of there. We're seeing them come into the Sabi Sands. Perhaps that's a good way to explain the answer to your question. We're seeing them coming into the Sabi Sands, which is about a 60,000 hectare private reserve on the border of the Kruger with pumped water holes. And because of where it is in position to the Kruger during this drought, the elephants are actually moving in quite large numbers to come and visit us. So whilst there's no specific time of year, there is very much a... sorry, I got distracted by James talking. There are very much... He's got a distracting voice. He was saying something interesting. But yes, there are, once it does get dry, then the animals will start to move to where there are specific water holes. They'll follow the food, they'll follow the rain. They've got such a vast conservation area to follow that they will have quite a lot of leeway to choose which way they go. Right, speaking of James, I couldn't hear a word that he said on the Game Drive channel and what he was updating us on. So let's find out from him exactly what he was chatting about.
I'm just staring at the floor here, everybody. We're on our southern boundary, and I'm hoping to find tracks of Karula or Tundi. Now, of course, this is a main access road, so lots and lots of people have been driving up and down it. So whether or not we'll be lucky enough to see some tracks, I don't know. But in this block is where the giraffe was looking rather nervously from side to side, and then she went kind of investigating, and unfortunately we had to nip home. So we're going to keep having a look around here and see if we don't have some sort of luck. It cannot be too long before Karula brings her babies back home. And that will be a joyous day for all. I suspect the internet may explode. With excitement, Twitter will definitely shut down with the number of comments we'll get. And I hope that afternoon will be today, but I'm not sure. I don't see any tracks at the moment. I'm not even sure if you can hear me. That should be a little bit better now. So we'll just keep driving along here and watching to see if we can see anything. We're going to do a loop around the block. The buffalo did a very strange thing. Some of them lay down, as you saw when you were last with us, before you went off to watch the playing elephants. And then they got up and moved away in the opposite direction. I don't know why they did that. I thought they were going to definitely go down towards Treehouse Dam for a bit of a drink. They might still do that eventually, but I guess the lack of heat has meant that they don't need to drink so much. And also, you know, a cool day like this, they will, instead of lying down in the shade during the heat of the day, they'll often actually move around, which they wouldn't normally. And I think I'm not sure, I think this weather breaks tomorrow, and then we'll be back to the most gorgeous autumnal temperatures, pushing up to sort of 32 and 34 degrees Celsius, which is around about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which for here is just ideal, really is lovely. And you can see perhaps just an indicator of the weather breaking there over the top of the mountains. Hello, Angela. While we're driving along here talking about Karula's new youngsters, you are correct in your assumption that Tundi is Karula's daughter. She is Shadow's mother. They are both 9 years old. And you want to know why it is that you were under the impression that she was called Saseka beforehand, which means beautiful. Well, it doesn't actually, but that's the intention of what it means. And why the name change? And the answer is I don't know. I'm not sure. I couldn't really tell you, other than to say that it does happen every so often. Sometimes the name has been shared. But is it not possible? Now, some of our leopard experts will be able to confirm this for you. It is possible that Saseka is from another litter. I'm just not entirely sure about that. But some of our leopard experts who've been watching for some time will be able to tell you, I'm sure better than I can, if Tundi is the same leopard, and if not, what happened to the leopard called Saseka. It's quite an interesting verb there. We were chatting about it today, about how words in local languages, if you're not familiar with the sounds, can be kind of, what is that? Would be a very good bird for the bird list if you're keeping the bird list with our new friend Sam. It was a ground scraper thrush. They're always around this area, but I don't see it here now. Have you got it? You're brilliant. You're a genius. Have you got it? Say when. Has it flown off? Very nice. Ground scraper thrush, everybody. So Saseka is a kudu. Was sort of derived from the adjective, or to be, or to, yeah, to, well, it's not an adjective, it is a kind of verb, to be beautiful. So sasegile means beautiful. So if you wanted to call somebody beautiful in Shangaan, you'd call them sasegile. There's a beautiful kudu bull there. Grazing, not grazing. Why do I always say that? It's like east and west. I always have to swap east and west. Every single time I mean west, I say east, and vice versa. Every single time I say graze, I mean browse, and likewise browse and graze. Anyway, that male bull kudu is browsing. And there is a red-billed oxpecker eating ticks on his rear end there. And you can see his mane, which is quite clear and quite distinct there, as he chews away in that very typical circular motion of all the ruminants. Now, you can calculate a kudu's age from the number of turns they have in the horn, and it's sort of a full turn every 2 years or so. So if you count that from the base, I would say you would 1, 2, 3, I'd say he's about 6 years old. Now that's fully grown for a male kudu. They will live up to 8 or 9 years, but interestingly, the females can live 14 or 15 years. Now, this is not as the more cynical male viewers would assume, that they're nitpicked and nagged into an early grave. Oh no, it is actually because they are obsessed, basically, with mating and fighting and trying to get mating rights, and also because their horns are such a complete hindrance for them. Now, can you imagine trying to run away from something in the bush with horns like that? It must be almost impossible, especially if you are a browser. So you basically live in thick bush, and yet you have to run away from things with an encumbrance like that on your head. Now, if you do have to run away from something, what you do is you lift your head back like that, because that stops the trees catching the horns. But if you do that, Bryan, what are you looking at?
The sky.
Exactly, and not where you're going, and so you'll find running away from something very difficult indeed. Just a quick, beautiful picture there of the mountains and the breaking cold front that has been hanging over us for the last few days. Ah, there we go. So thank you very much, Rosie and Karen. Goodness gracious, this is very complicated. I might have to get Rebecca to read it to me again. But some interesting information on Saseka. Saseka was originally another daughter, I think, of Karula's, is what was said. And her sister was Rebecca. Quickly, Rebecca. Anyway, she was... Yes, now shadow was, of course, originally called Tingana, not related to... Sorry, I'm just getting this is starting to sound extremely muddled. So what I can understand is that Tingana was Shadow's original name, she's then Shadow, and then Rexon originally called Tundi Saseka, but that was changed when the rangers then eventually named the two leopards. So that's exactly what happens. Our viewers name leopards as soon as they see them, and then what happens is the rangers change those names, and we have to try and dovetail with that. And what we've done this time round is say to the rangers, please name the leopards now. We don't need to choose the name, you can choose the name, and then at least we have one name for the leopards. But there was another Saseka, as far as I can understand it, and she is no longer. Correct, Rebecca? There we go, I've got it correct. Thank you very much there, Anne and Karen. Thank you very much for the leopard information. Righty. Now, the giraffe was walking through here, so we're just going to pop along there, see if we can't spot anything. And if we can't, we may head off towards Gallagher Pan, where I just wonder if those lions are not going to pop out. Hello, Safari Dean. You're saying, is it not cold enough for a beanie here today? No, it isn't as cold as yesterday, is it, Brian? It's not as quite as bad. It's a little bit warmer. Brian has only 3 jackets on as opposed to the traditional 4. 4 layers Brian has. So it's not much warmer than yesterday, but that cold wind with the moisture-laden wind and the thick Scotch mist is not blowing through. So while I have my beanie with me, I don't actually have need to wear it yet. That might change. It may well change as the night starts to fall. Oh, this is wonderful. Brian, just see if you can see. Can you see it? It's a, I don't want to say the name. Under the tree. Down. There. There we go. Can you see it? Can you see that, everybody? You've got it there, top left. What are we looking at? This is so clever. This is, of course, how a little animal survives. A little animal like this steenbok, which is now in the middle of your picture, survives by staying hidden like that. And it is gone completely still, and I wonder if you can even see it. You've got the branches in front, and then just behind there, you can maybe pick out the tawny shape of the steenbok, and then the black eye in the middle of that slightly tawny shape, and then the ears with a very distinctive kind of black venation. There you saw it move its head. Isn't that clever? That's how steenbok stays alive, by behaving like a stone. Steen means stone. You would never see that unless you just happened to look that way, which I did quite by chance, happened to look the right way. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I have to tell you also that there is a new Twitter handle that has been named after my old hat, which was soon to be sent to James Richard, who has bid $270 for it. That will be going to a trust called the Biffles Hook Trust. I'm just waiting for the details and how to make that an effective thing from the United States. James, I hope you're happy with your purchase. We're very appreciative for your purchase. But someone has a Twitter handle called, what's it called, Rebecca? James's Hat, or R.I.P. James's Old Hat, something like that. Oh, yes. So it's James's Hat at R.I.P. James's Old Hat. And here we, of course, have my whole array of hats. There we go. We can zoom in there. That will negate the need for me to hide my bald spot. There we go, all 3 of them. And well done, Brian, thank you. The temptation to show my bald spot must have been overwhelming. Wasn't quite strong. I was ready to grab it.
I saw.
Yes, if it was Jeandre, there's no ways that he would have held off the temptation to show my balding pate. Anyway, let's find some wildlife. So, I don't know what we're going to find here. I don't think we're going to spend too long because it was a while back that we saw that giraffe through here. And I think we'll head towards the Gallagher Pan after this and see if we can't find some sign or other of those lions. Also to tell you, by the way, that I did go to the hyena den this morning. I wasn't driving. And there was no one there, and I'm pretty sure because it was so chilly this morning, they were all hiding like they were last night, inside the hole. Hope they haven't moved. Last time we thought they'd moved, they haven't. Hello, Jesse. We were chatting about hyenas earlier, or right now actually, and we know that hyenas have lives that are full of violence. It's not a peaceful life being a hyena, and a little while back, everyone, a hyena was attacked either by her own clan members or perhaps she had come in from another clan. We're not entirely sure, but her foot was crushed, her ear was nearly ripped off. We think she was actually part of this clan, just a very low-ranking member, and we want to know if we've seen her again. And the answer is no. And I'm pretty sure she would have died by now. It's unlikely that a female will join another clan. Males can go off and join other clans. Highly unlikely that a female will. So I suspect quite strongly that she has shaken off this mortal coil. But because she was low-ranking, because she was attacked once, it's unlikely that she would ever spend too much time at the den. The lower-ranking females will normally spend time away from the den, unless they have babies, and often they will then give birth to the babies at a secondary den somewhere else. So I'm not really sure. Right, we're going to drive a little bit quicker, see if we can get to Gallagher Pan, and Jamie is going to show you a sinking golden orb.
One thing about weather like the one or the kind that we've been experiencing is that it clears away all of the dust and the haze from the skies, and it leaves you with these crystal clear views of the Drakensberg Mountains. Totally different sunset to the ones that we have been experiencing recently. Isn't it beautiful? Totally different color. Bright yellow. I've been really trying to subtly put on my jacket. I'm stuck. Maybe. It's all gone very wrong. Okay, sorry about that. Managed it. But yes, isn't that the most extraordinary view that we managed to acquire? My left arm was stuck sort of behind me. I couldn't move it at all. So much for my attempt to sneak on my jacket quickly. We'll take one last look at this view, and then I'm going to have to pull off the road again to let Jim Reeves come through and just take it in a moment of silence. The Drakensberg Mountains, a mountain range that runs for 1,000 kilometers through the country, cuts right through the center. The one that you're looking at hidden in the clouds is the Mariepskop Mountain, the one that Brent and Jerry, Connor and Pete were up on the top of just 2 days ago. Mike Warp, you were wondering how far the mountains are from us. Sure. In a straight line, probably about 70 to 80 kilometers away. That's a rough guess in a straight line. It's a little bit further to drive there, of course, but in a straight line, about 80 kilometers, which is 50 miles, 55 miles. So not that far away at all. I used to work in an area just on the other side, a little bit closer, on the other side of the tip that you can see on the right, to the west of where we are now, and a bit closer to them. That is where I spent the last 3 years before I started at WildEarth. Very totally different environment. Very rocky, 2 perennial rivers, the Makutswi and the Salati, which flow into the Olifants River, which in turn flows through Kruger as one of the largest rivers in the Kruger National Park. Different and yet the same. All right, let poor Jim come through. He's been very patiently sitting. Try and shuffle my jacket around as well. And as I pull off, I'm going to just go back to a question about the hyraxes. Vicky's just saying that as much as she loves the as much as she loves the animals and the information about them, the sunrise and the sunsets are for her one of her favorite things to look at. You know, Vicky, I've always made a point in my life in the bush to stop and to stare, to stop and to look, and oh, there goes a black-chested snake eagle. Sorry, Jeandre. Oh, look how tatty that wing is. Sure. Missing out on a serious portion of primary feathers there. Bobbing about in the wind. And what is sitting up there? A vulture. Oh well, we'll get a bit closer to that vulture in a moment and just have a look. Shame, the poor vultures, this is really not their type of weather, and I'll go into detail about why. I just wanted to go back to the question about the closest relative to the elephants. That was from Leopard, and we spoke about the rock hyraxes. A rock hyrax is about, close to about 4 kilograms, so about 8.5 pounds. When compared to an elephant, it's a very strange thing to think of them as one of the closest relatives to something like an elephant, a dassie or a hyrax. That's just for those of you who are unfamiliar with what we were talking about this big, give or take. So tiny little animals, and that's where the evolutionary paths of animals I find so fascinating comes in. And of course, speaking of evolutionary paths, you must by now know my plan for this end part of the afternoon safari. The winds died down. I tried this morning, it didn't work. I'm going to try again this afternoon, and please let the hyenas be home. I will be very sad if they are not. I even considered taking them that bone that we found on the road as a peace offering, since they keep ducking and diving me. Don't fly. Don't you do that. Don't fly away. Oh, see Daisy. Oh, well, it was worth asking, I suppose. So that was a white-backed vulture that is currently grounded due to the cold weather that we're experiencing. So they're very heavy birds, they're very bulky birds, and they don't have the best flight mechanism. So whilst they can flap and move small distances, what they really prefer to do is wait for the ground to heat up and to ride the thermals of the hot air rising in order to gain the lift that they need to peer down towards any sort of kill site, or look for any kind of kill site or carcass that they can forage off or scavenge off. And in this case, it's very common in this kind of weather to see them resting on these dead trees. when I was learning to guide, I was always told they were dead dog trees because they've got no bark. Haha. Jeandre thought it was funny. That's what I was always told. It was when I was first being trained in the art of bush knowledge, and they used to ask us, you know, it was the very serious joke of the trainers. They'd sit and say, "Come on now, what tree is that?" And we all were so terrified that we were convinced that we were somehow missing this huge gap in our knowledge, that we were meant to know exactly what this tree was. Just as a matter of interest, it looks like a knobthorn. It does have a little bit of bark there. It's got the right sort of shape and structure for a dead knobthorn or Acacia nigrescens. And it will slowly, the patches of bark will rot off and return to the earth. Very good firewood, knobthorn bark, or knobthorn wood. I got distracted. Oh yes, the vultures like to sit in those dead trees for a very specific reason. And that is because in weather like this, they're grounded, but rather than trying to find themselves, as I said, quite bulky flyers, rather than trying to find themselves a tree with vegetation where they can't really find a nice landing spot and they have to shuffle about and they run the risk of getting stuck in the foliage, it's much easier to just pick one of the dead trees and settle there. What are you seeing? An eagle. That would be a nice contrast to what we were saying about the vultures. Very far. Oh, I see, that far. Well spotted, Jeandre. That's, where is he? There he is. Oh, it's our vulture. It's another vulture friend. Sure, Jeandre, that was most impressive. At that distance.
There's two.
There is two, yeah. Two vultures. Interesting. I've just been listening to long and involved conversations about what's happening on Torchwood and the fact that they found a load of vultures, but they haven't found the reason for the load of vultures. Personally, I think there's a good chance that they might just be there because it is so cold. As you've seen, occasionally, vultures, when they see other vultures, will move into the area. So what you end up getting is these spiraling groups of up to 50 vultures at a time. So they often congregate around an area. When the weather then gets cold, they'll often then end up sitting in the same area. Giving off, as Teresa said, a very prehistoric look. They do look very, very prehistoric, Teresa. I'm completely with you on that. And in fact, funny you should say that, because a lot of the dinosaur noises in Jurassic Park were recorded from the sounds of vultures screeching at each other. When you first hear a vulture scream, I promise you will never forget it. It sounds like what you imagine a dinosaur to sound like. And I think it was particularly the velociraptors that they used it for. They also, in terms of African influence, they used elephant rumbles to provide some of the noises for the dinosaurs. There was something else, tortoises. I think it was the recordings of tortoises, because tortoises do make the most peculiar sounds, particularly when concerned with matters of the heart, or at least matters of reproduction. They can make some very curious grunting sounds. So those are the sort of the three different sources that the creators of the Jurassic Park films went back and utilized for the sound effects. And then, of course, as we've spoken about with the guinea fowls, guinea fowl bird, the helmeted guinea fowls that we so often see dashing about around here, they provided the movement and the motion that they then modeled the running motion of the dinosaurs on, the way that the T-Rex moves. And when you see guinea fowl run, and if you really look at them carefully, and one thing I've been trying to do is capture some on slow motion, which is proving to be quite difficult because they seem to be intent on running away from me whenever I jump out with my camera all ready to go. But it is something that I'm trying to get to highlight just how clearly you can see the similarity between the T-Rex running after the vehicle or something like that and the guinea fowl. guinea fowl are slightly, I have to confess, whoopsie, slightly less intimidating than the thought of a Tyrannosaurus chasing us down the road. Since we're here, we'd better check up on Sydney's dam, find out what is happening there, and then we're going to loop around and go back towards the hyena den. And hopefully the hyenas will be out and about and ready to greet me once again. I feel as though I've offended them in some way. I can't, it's not possible, of course. I've just had some bad luck. We stopped and had the most extraordinary view of the Drakensberg Mountains, and Miss Lynn was wondering, with the elephants that we saw earlier, could they be able to traverse towards the mountains? And unfortunately not in that direction. There are a couple of farms, fences, communities, villages, look, elephants on that subject, in the way. So Miss Lynn, no, but there are great schemes that will take many, many years to put in place, but that will aim to be able to open up previous migration corridors that, yes, might lead to those mountains. They might lead all the way to Botswana. There's extraordinary ideas and thoughts behind it as a way of opening up a migration corridor. It will take a long time, though. Let's just double check and see what mood these ellies are. They seem to be fine. Nice and relaxed. As I said earlier, windy days upset elephants. So it's important, even if you know the herd very well, to just give them a little bit more of a chance to make it clear how they're feeling. They seem to be, I think our timing has been impeccable here. I'm hoping they're all going to go and have a drink at Sydney's dam. Hello, boy. Yes, little boy. Right on the outskirts of your herd. Shame. I always have a degree of sympathy for these teenage males. And the reason I do feel such pity for them is, of course, there comes a time in every male elephant's life where they get ousted from the herd. And Joan was wondering, when it does come time for that to occur, is there a process that occurs? What exactly happens? The answer is they get pushed further and further by the females onto the outskirts. They get disciplined every time they try to move back in. But also then at the same time, you know, I say I feel sorry for them. That's a very anthropomorphic way of looking at it. Although I have seen some very confused looking young males when they get rejected by the rest of the herd. Oh, how stunning. So Joan, there's also instinct involved. Instinct that tells those little male elephants that it's time to be off. And it's time to make their own way in the world. Their hormones are starting, hormone levels starting to rise. Just look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, at least 22. Oh, there's more on the way. Oh, absolutely wonderful. Hello, girlies. Hi, guys. All right, girl. It's okay, big girl. I'm not going to get in your way, I promise. I promise. The female on the left with her ears out, giving us a solid checking out. The male on the right, much more relaxed. We're just going to do a little bit of a VR segment as well here, depending on Hello, boy. You're going to come and be naughty. And no. Yes, you gorgeous thing. Yes, you gorgeous thing. He raced down the road in front of me, which is why it's always important to factor in when you're reading elephant's body language. That race that he did down had nothing to do with me, and just to the fact that he is at least 3-ish tons of elephant bull on a downward slope. Sometimes it's just easier to move faster. No big girl. It's okay. It's okay. I love watching these greeting ceremonies with different elephants and different members of the herd. One of our viewers actually said that Sydney's Dam is their happy place. And this is, look at that, trunk straight over the head and into the temporal gland. And the youngsters imitating that behavior as well. And then tip of the trunk straight into the mouth. And that is because the elephant is touching the scent and then placing it very delicately on its organ of Jacobson, on the roof of its mouth. So that vomeronasal organ that is capable of essentially tasting the smells. We have a residual one that we no longer use as human beings. For the elephants, it's a very important part of their day-to-day life. Oh, there's still more elephants on the way. This is so beautiful. What do you think, Jeandre? Should we go forward a little bit, get the ones drinking? I think that's a nice idea. These moments like this are so special. And this is the one thing that Sydney's Dam is so fantastic for. Because you get these long-range views. Ooh. And gentle, subtle squeaks of Rusty's brake pads. You get these long-range views of a wide-open clearing in the dam. And you find yourself with a scene that is so stereotypically African. In a good way. All the elephants, they wade in and they stretch out their trunks because elephants are quite fussy drinkers. They like clean water, and rather than trying to drink around the muddy edges, it's just nicer to stretch out. Get hold of the fresher water around, and then there's swallows fluttering all around them. There's a little... See if you can spot the tuskless elephant in this group. There's one. She's quite small. We've just had hundreds of elephants moving around Djuma today. Here comes the rest of the herd. Could be 2 herds. Either way, they seem well acquainted with each other. But here they come. It's not been a hugely hot day, so they're not fully demonstrating the famous elephant water walk, which is that race down towards the water. What a beautiful scene this is. Quite nice to just sit and to watch them for a moment. Charlotte has been watching as one of our regular viewers and was wondering, because we see so many baby elephants, but was wondering what the chances are of seeing an elephant mate or give birth on our live safaris. Charlotte, mating has a much higher chance than watching an elephant give birth. That being said, I have only ever seen elephants mating twice in my entire time in the bush. I'm not sure how many times James has seen it, but it's not an occurrence that I've regularly encountered. Quite unusual to see. And then the chances of seeing an elephant cow give birth. I've come close once in my life, and that was on foot, and I was actually very glad that I wasn't present for that particular moment, because I could see from the tracks the whole herd had surrounded this particular female and formed a protective circle, and I could hear them squealing away off in the bushes away from the site where she'd given birth. So I knew that they were in an unsettled mood. But I came across a very warm placenta still just in the middle of the ground. It was incredible. It was such an incredible moment, as well as baby's first poo. What's it called? Why does this word never stick in my head? I think it's called the meconium. The baby's first defecation. Totally different substance to anything an elephant produces in its normal adult life or after birth life. Charlotte, you never know though. Stranger things have happened. People have recorded young elephant cows being caught by surprise and going into labor, for example, right close to some of the main camps in Kruger. There was the famous case of the one that accidentally gave birth in the Olifants River, with her poor newborn calf now plunged into the depths and the older females coming to its rescue. And I must tell you, it would be the most phenomenal experience if it did occur, and you never know. And Cindy, as I mentioned in this, we watch this glorious scene. The birds that you're seeing fluttering about are swallows. My guess would be red-chested swallows, just trying to judge by their size, but it is very far away. Oh, this is such a precious scene. Charlotte, nothing would fill me with greater joy than being able to bring you a live elephant birth. But I think we would have to be very fortunate indeed to experience something like that. You really get to watch the dynamics at play here. The young bulls roughhousing at the back of the herd, the little calves caught up in all of the excitement, casting backwards and forwards, trying to decide whether to follow mom or to play. And the large females so clearly taking up those leadership roles. With the young males pushed towards the outskirts, they're still very much young at heart, as you can see, as they push and shove each other around. But we all know about the incredible defensive structure that is essentially an elephant herd personified. And if ever faced with a threat, they will go together in a huddle, push the babies towards the center of the group, and defend them in that way. But Marion was wondering, Marion's watching all the way in Arkansas, whether or not the young males would be allowed into the protective huddle, since it would mean more bodies, more protection, you know. Makes total sense. Marion, yes, for the most part they would. It depends on their ages. And it also depends on the area that you are in. I was watching a documentary on the lions in Botswana that started specializing in killing elephants. And almost without fail, the elephants that they targeted were these young bulls on the outskirts of the herd. And what was interesting to me, get this little one, he's so naughty. Just won't let this other elephant come with him or come past. Oh, there we go. It's time to follow the rest of the herd. But what was so fascinating, Marion, to me about that documentary was that the herd didn't protect that young male. They didn't form that defensive huddle. Although I think that, look, I mean, it's a documentary, so you don't get, as beautiful as it was and as well shot and honest as it was, you don't get the full backstory. And that could have been 6, 7, 12 hours, 24 hours of harassment by the lions that might have caused the elephants to eventually move off. I didn't get that whole backstory to it. But I have seen young males included in defensive huddles before. Stopping for a quick snack. Some dust bathing. Some of the older females just responsible for herding the herd. And one little one that's definitely, oh, 2 little ones that are being very naughty. Get left behind. And the male at the back. You can see how much taller he is on the left, the back left there. Even at this distance, you can really see the size difference between a male elephant and the females around him. And that rounded profile. Oh, going up to say hello to one of the ladies. He just stands out, quite literally, head and shoulders above the rest. Now, the reason that we sit so far away at the moment, it's one of the reasons, I think one of the things I love about Sydney's Dam, because it actually forces us to stop and have these opportunities to watch these sightings from long range. And Agnes, no, we can't unfortunately get closer to Sydney's Dam, as much as we would all really, really like to. As you know, the Sabi Sands itself is made up of different pockets of private land, private landowners. Some have commercial lodges, some don't. This particular property that Sydney's Dam is on is called Buffelshoek. Hook. It's owned by a collection of lots of different landowners, but we do not have a traverse agreement there, so we cannot drive on there. The way that vehicles work and move about different lands is very much a complex process. It's one that's got an extraordinary amounts of money in one way involved, but also politics and also looking out for the best interests of the animals, the ecosystem, and the guests themselves. Because the Sabi Sands is very careful about avoiding a situation where you have this pressure of lots and lots of vehicles in sightings. You don't want too many vehicles around. So, yes, this is Buffelshoek. Hook. We can't get any closer. Ooh. Somebody got a little bit cross there as the elephants disappear over the Sydney's Dam wall. Oh! Chaos! Chaos and confusion. Young males running all over the show. And a female. It's that same female that was a bit unsettled when she came to join us. Look at that body language. Look at the tail. Up, almost upright. Oh, it is a young male. Head up, ears out. Moving backwards and forwards, rocking almost. And that is how you judge that an elephant is upset. Oh, he's so upset. Wonder what happened there. Oh, little one getting involved. Males dashing backwards and forwards, and youngsters as well, in the chaos. Some of them are having a great time. They're having a great game. Others look less enchanted with the whole situation. And there's a little bit of stress there. They're all tails now up in the air and stiffened, and a female running about to try and maybe extend some calm in this situation. And you have a question on that subject about how elephant hierarchies work while we watch this situation play out. And the answer is there's no one dominant male. The female breeding herds are female-led. Sorry, not the female breeding herds, that makes no sense. The breeding herds are female dominated, usually led by the oldest and quite often largest cow, but size doesn't necessarily play a total role in that. So it will be led by the largest, or at least the oldest female in the group until she gets a little bit too old. Look how they've restored order, those females. They walked in there and sorted it out. That being said, unlike the spotted hyena, where we're on our way to next, the elephant is not truly matriarchal in the sense that the males are still larger. They still are capable of pushing the females around if they choose to. They just, however, lead completely separate lives. And they only really associate with breeding herds if they happen to find themselves in the same area, or if there is a female in estrus that they are looking to mate with. And then they do get a bit pushy, and everybody gets a little bit upset. And that's one of the reasons why we thought that perhaps all of the shouting from the elephants earlier today might actually have been connected to an elephant ball in must. I'm going to head to the spotted hyena den before it gets too dark. Fingers crossed they are still there. In the meantime, James is on his way back to another spotted creature.
Right, now we've come back to where Tingana was, and he's gone. Or he seems to be gone. So we're just going to very carefully drive around here. I have been looking for the lions. There he is. What is he doing there? We all know that Tingana is something of a specialist when it comes to termite-dwelling mammals, such as warthogs and achoo. I think he's just looking after his foot at the moment. Let's go a bit closer. So while we do that, just to tell you, I did go... Sorry, that will fix the audio a bit. I did go and look for the lions where the elephants were shouting this morning. Didn't even find a track of them. So maybe it was just youngsters playing today. Maybe there was a musk bull in the way and he was causing trouble. I don't know. Anyway, there weren't any lions where I looked today. But there is Tingana, and we will not get over this particular log. Not without doing some serious damage, so I'm afraid I think that's probably the best view we're going to get of him. This tired fellow. At least he's managed to get up onto the mound, so he can't be that completely crippled. I'm not going to put a light on him, so we are going to run out of light fairly soon. We've only got about 45 minutes left. And all the way from Finland comes concern for Tingana and Raisi. You want to know if perhaps he is more hurt than he was yesterday. I don't know. I didn't see him yesterday. So I couldn't tell you if he was more hurt or not. But I think he was a lot more agile, hey, Bryan, than he was yesterday. Yeah, definitely. So he is probably, yes, more injured. And 2 injuries on both back legs, which is quite interesting. Because that is unlikely. It's unlikely that those came from Tundi. So it's not unusual if you find a male leopard after mating. Certainly when we found him after he mated with Karula that one time, we had a very nice footage of his front foot being grabbed by hers as he tried to dismount. She whipped round and stuck her claw into his foot and tore at it. And for the next 2 days, he limped a bit on his front foot. But I really struggle to see how or why she would have injured him on the back. I mean, it indicates that he's been attacked by something. Often, of course, animals that are attacked will often be attacked from behind simply because it's the business end in front. And so were he to have been set upon by perhaps 2 hyenas, they would have tried to bite him on the backside. He, in turn, would have tried to run away. Maybe that's what's happened. I haven't seen the injury, so I don't know. Now, Amber, you ask a very interesting question. For those who don't know, when a leopard mates, I've been talking about the fact that she will often attack him as he dismounts and to prevent that, he will often grab her behind the back of the neck with his teeth and hold her as he dismounts. Now, the reasons for that is that he has a barbed penis. Now, this is an unusual adaptation. And Amber, your question is a valid one. Why on earth would a leopard have a barbed penis, or any cat? And what it does, of course, is that it creates pain for the female when he dismounts. But what we think that does is create a contraction that allows his sperm to be sort of, I don't know, given a head start. It sort of squeezes, creates a contraction, and allows for the sperm to move up towards the fallopian tubes, which are the other side of the uterus, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, is where fertilization in a cat takes place. So that's, we think, why he has a barbed penis. As he withdraws, there's a contraction, which is not fun for her, but it does create a situation where that sperm is, or that its path is facilitated up towards the fallopian tubes in the uterus. I'm just going to find out from the game drive if anybody is coming here, because we're not going to put a light on him, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. Simply because he will obviously be a lot more vulnerable with his injury. Are there any stations making their way to sighting of Tingana? I'm just asking that into the game drive radio. No answer so far. So that's good. So as we leave, what we will do, because we'll leave when it gets too dark, we will zone the area, which means we're basically saying to everybody, you mustn't come here. And that's because he's a bit injured. And normally, an uninjured leopard, I think like last night, Jamie was sitting with him and Tundi in this very same area. They would have put a light on them, and that's because they're uninjured. They can look after themselves, and they're nocturnal. But I wouldn't want to attract a hyena to this area with him unable to move as smoothly as is befitting the Prince of Africa. I always feel a bit bad saying that, given that they seem to be so much more noble than a lion. Hello, Steve R. A nice question from you about comparisons, and comparisons are the best way, of course, for human beings to understand what on earth they're looking at. And if you're perhaps a new viewer, to be looking at that leopard sitting on a termite mound, you've got no idea how big he is, you've got no idea how tall he is, what he weighs, or anything like that. Now, Steve, he is probably about 75 to 80 kilograms, so that's up to 180 pounds. Here we're going to see him move now. Oof, it doesn't look good, does it? And Steve, you want to know how he compares to the size of a Florida panther, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, is much the same species as a mountain lion. Is that correct, Steve? If it is the same species as a mountain lion, you'll find that he's actually a very similar size to a male mountain lion, or cougar. Oh, he's such a magnificent fellow. I'm very sad that he's injured. I hope it heals. He's walking very, very gingerly. Bryan, do you remember where the injuries were?
The one was on his back left thigh. That was the main one that I could see.
He's not limping, but he's moving very gingerly, isn't he? We'll just... Oh, I actually can't move here. A very, very nice question coming through here. Now, leopard, of course, has one of the most Catholic diets of any animal out here. I literally can't get over this tree, so we're going to have to try and drive around here. Our beard, can a leopard eat termites or smaller things? Absolutely. And that does give it a better chance of survival than, say, a cheetah. So, I mean, leopards will fish, they will eat frogs, they will eat termites, absolutely, if they can get them. None of the termites seem to be emerging at the moment, though, so I'm not sure how he'd get hold of some termites. I don't know how we're going to get through here. Hold on, everyone. Let me just quickly turn around. Let's see if we can't ease our way through that quite thick bush there. It does get very thick through here, so if he has not gone sort of to ground the other side of this thicket here, I'm afraid we're probably going to have to leave him, simply because I don't want to create any situation where he's struggling to hear or smell a potential threat coming this way. So we'll try and get a last quick look. There he is. The elephants have made a big mess everywhere during the drought, pushing all the trees over. But let's see if we can't get a look at his injuries. Bryan, I'll try and get around here, but he is very awkwardly placed now. I'll try and sneak us in here so that we can get a proper look at him. Go ahead, Mike. Mike, I've got no idea, I'm afraid. I know he was on WildEarth. I'm not sure if he is now. There we go. Sleeping there. And Mike, Tingana is still on site. Tundi is not. He's injured, and so I'm going to zone this area as it gets dark. We're not going to put a light on him, so the area will be zoned as of about 15 minutes. There we go, that's done. What is that? Oh, very nice inquiry. He's moved down and you can see him curled up like a chilly dog next to the fire here. And he's definitely a little bit chilly, you can see that. Penny, a lovely question from you. Would he have been on the termite mound for warmth? Penny, it's possible. I don't think so, though, because most of the termite mounds are closed at the moment. They don't have any kind of open, obvious chimneys. And I think that for warmth, he will go into thick bush. I'm not sure why he isn't in thick bush now. And Jamie apparently was hugging the termite mound this morning for warmth. It is lovely on a cold morning to put your hands over, or as Jamie was doing, hug a termite mound, because yes, vents do produce that lovely heat, the metabolic heat of the termites. I don't, you know, Penny, I think if he was doing that, I'm not sure why he would have moved away. But you can see him, I mean, it's exactly the same as your house cat, exactly the same as your dogs, that will curl up like that in order to try and stay warm. Now, it's not that cold here. I mean, of course, we complain bitterly because we like heat. And I know that many of you are keepers of domestic cats. My mother is a highly enthusiastic cat keeper, and of course the most appealing thing about a domestic cat is that it likes to purr, and it makes you feel all good that you've made the cat feel good enough to purr. And Anne, you want to know if these wild cats are able to do that. In a certain way they can. The most obvious big cat that does it is a cheetah, but the Panthera genus, so the leopards, the lions, the tigers, the jaguars, they all have a very different setup around the voice box. So they can't purr in the same way. And when they do purr, when they do make a kind of purring sound, it comes out as a blood-curdling growl. So they don't purr in the same way that a cheetah does. A cheetah will purr like a domestic cat. I've heard a caracal do exactly that. You asked about caracals, but I don't know about a serval. I'm assuming that a serval can. Definitely an African wildcat can. I don't know about the small cat, spotted cat, and all the other little cats. But I'd be interested to know, for those who have experience perhaps of cougars or pumas or other big cats like that who are not part of the Panthera genus, if they are able to purr. But Tingana ain't purring now. He's not a comfortable fellow. He's cold and he's sore. And he's probably hungry after the, well, fairly energy-sapping time that he's had with Tundi over the last 5 or 6 days. He's lying underneath a very dead knobthorn tree, but it frames him quite nicely, doesn't it? And above there, you can see still this gunmetal grey sky moving over from behind us. Behind us is the southeast, and so it is going from southeast to northwest. And Christine, of course, we're talking about the fact that he is uncomfortable, he's sore. We're not going to put a light on him because he is obviously vulnerable in this particular stage. And an obvious thing for a cat to do when it's threatened, of course, is go up a tree. And Christine, you want to know if he will perhaps do that during the course of this night for protection. I think it's unlikely, Christine. I think he'll seek refuge in some thick bush. He'll doze off and then wake up and look around and doze off. His nose will continuously be working. His ears will continuously be listening from side to side, so he won't sleep soundly like a lion will. But what we need to understand or remember is that a tree is not a comfortable place for a leopard to be. They will sleep in trees if they have to. So if a hyena came along here or a leopard came along, he may well find a tree to go up. I think it would hurt him to climb a tree because he would have to use his back legs to lift his mass. He will lift his mass, I suppose, with his front legs to a large extent, but he will still have to use his back legs. And then lying in the tree is uncomfortable. It's exposed to the wind quite often, and so I don't think he's going to choose to do that. I think he's probably going to choose to do precisely what he's doing there, but ideally under some thicker bush. So we'll spend another 5 minutes with him, everyone, and then give him some space. Of course, as you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but the camera picture is slightly changed, and what that is the gain being pushed up on the camera, and as it gets darker out here, so the camera sort of all allows for that. There you go, you saw a little switch there, and what it does is it just kind of boosts the light, and so it's actually brighter on your screens than it is in the vehicle. And so although we will still be able to see him in 5 minutes, we're going to leave him because it will be starting to get dark. Quite astoundingly, the flies are still bugging him despite the fact that it is chilly. And I was saying, just before we had a wonderful question from Penny about the termite mound, that although we say it's cold, I mean, for those of you living in North America, certainly in the northern states, I mean, our concept of cold is so far removed from yours that this would be a balmy day for you, and especially if you lived in Northern Europe, and Britain perhaps, or Raisa in Finland even, you'd be out here in a t-shirt and shorts, I'm sure. But we, of course, are used to the fairly volcanic temperatures of the summer. We'll get some of those back next week. You can just see his ears flicking all the time. So what I meant was, by him sort of listening and smelling all the time, you can see here that although he looks like a sleepy dog or a sleepy cat, he is constantly aware. His nose is constantly working. He's constantly trying to pick up scent. And although his eyes are closing, his ears will pick up the slightest hint of an odd sound. His nose will pick up, I think it's no coincidence that his nose is facing directly into the wind. I'm pretty sure that that is an intentional thing. And much like the mosquitoes, don't allow us to sleep at night, so the flies don't allow him to sleep too well. He is a very magnificent male leopard. So we're going to say goodbye to him now. Goodbye, Tingana. Bryan, say goodbye to Tingana.
Bye, Tingana.
And we'll wish him well for the night and hope that no hyenas come this way. He looks pretty well hidden there, as you can see when we zoom out. Let's go across to Jamie, see how her evening drive is going. We'll pull out of this fairly difficult situation and see you with our spotlight on in just a little while.
Hopefully no spotted hyenas go across in the direction of Tingana. Poor boy. I'm sure though he will be back up on his feet very, very soon. But we will keep checking up on him. I'm glad to hear that James has zoned the sighting, so stopped anybody else from going to see him. And hopefully he can have the night to lick his wounds and recover. And on the subject of no spotted hyenas at the hyena den, it's actually starting to get to the point where it's quite depressing. I'm feeling deeply, deeply hurt by their absence. But no, I've just had some bad timing recently and nobody was home at the hyena den tonight. And so we head off into the darkness. As the light starts to fade, this becomes one of my favorite times to go out exploring in the bush. You just never know, and especially on cold days like today, you just never know what you might encounter and what might be out and about sooner than expected. I'm still thinking porcupine. I still haven't managed to see a porcupine while I've been here. That is most definitely on my list. But in terms of the slightly larger animals, I've come back to this block around Gallagher Shortcut and Mvubu Road to check and see whether James's theory is correct and that they are in fact hiding in here somewhere. And speaking of nocturnal animals, Tony was wondering about an animal that I've hardly ever seen while I've been here, and that is bats. Tony, I will keep my eyes peeled for a bat. I will try and show you a bat. I haven't seen that many, and I'm not sure because, of course, I only arrived in this area last year, July. I'm not sure whether it's because there are less bats here than where I used to work, or whether or not the drought has had an impact on the bat population. Since, of course, the larger bats, the smaller bats are all insect eaters and therefore are reliant on the insect populations and will move about in terms of wherever there's an insect population explosion. And that is why some of the largest mammal migrations in the world are by bats themselves. Now, in terms of Tony, in terms of the first part of your question, which was how many different species of bats are there in Africa? That is an enormous question. I don't know off the top of my head. In fact, I'm not even sure how many different species of bats there are in South Africa. The answer is lots, and I'll stop and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Take a moment. Here we go. Let's just stop here for a second, and we'll just go through, and I'll just show you just briefly. I'm not going to stop for long about this, but just to give you an idea of just how many bats there really are. So the Megachiroptera family, the fruit bats, there is 1, the Warburg's epaulated fruit bat. There is 2, the straw-colored fruit bat. It's not even, all of them don't necessarily have pictures. 3, Egyptian fruit bat, one of the most common species that we could get out here. And then we'll go across to the Microchiroptera, sheath-tailed and tomb bats, Mauritian tomb bat. These are the tinier ones, so these are the insect-eating bats that find their way about through echolocation. A Mauritian tomb bat, an Egyptian tomb bat, large-eared, free-tailed bat. Look at how creepy that gentleman looks with its sharp teeth and large ears. It looks terrifying. It looks like something out of a horror film. Flat-headed free-tailed, Midas free-tailed, Angolan free-tailed bat. I'm just skipping through here just to give you a rough idea. And it goes on, and it goes on, And it goes on. And I'm not going to go and list through every single species. So, yes, you get the idea. And I haven't even got to the Egyptian slit-faced bats yet, or the horseshoe bats. There are lots and lots of them. Tony, what I'll do is I'll do some research into exactly, because there's just so many in here. There must be at least 40 in that book. There's probably more in this particular region, and there's definitely more in Africa. So, yes, I will keep my eye out for them. I happen to love bats. I think they are adorable. Where I used to live, which, as I described earlier in the drive, is not too far away from here. We lived in an old farmhouse with quite a large ceiling space between the ceiling and the roof, an attic space. And the bats used to live there. And we got very, very used to taking a shower with 8 bats flying about and occasionally sort of gripping onto the wall and staring at you, or attempting to go to visit the facilities with a bat staring at you from above the toilet paper dispenser. I've hardly ever seen any bats since I've been here. So, Susie, apparently you also love bats. I will promise I'll keep my eyes peeled for any bat species that I can find. I haven't managed to get a bat on a live safari. I don't think. Jeandre, have you filmed a bat? Once accidentally with Scott. Okay, so we're on for a good positive what's the word, statistics here. Doing well. I promise I will keep an eye out for them. I never avoid them. I just hardly ever see them. And it's interesting, and I think some of it is the product of the drought as well, because both for the fruit bats and the insect-eating bats, the Microchiroptera, they are also struggling when it comes. I mean, they're both going to be affected by the drought. Less fruit, less insects, less bats. Up we go, up Vubu Road, a little bit bouncy. That road is slowly, slowly attempting to wash away. Now we have an exceptionally complex question from Safari Dean. Safari Dean was wondering, do any other animal species, apart from human beings, have a negative impact on their environment, or is it only human beings? Sure, that's a complex question. No, it's not only human beings, but a lot of the negative impact that occurs from species, let's say, for example, from elephants, shaping and perhaps turning an area from woodland to grassland because they're overpopulated. That's because people have fenced them in. Let's think about ticks. Ticks in large numbers are not ideal, but they also act to remove weak animals from the ecosystem. So a lot of the time, I think, Safari Dean, the negative impact that we talk about is due to a lack of understanding on our part about how the ecosystem actually works. And I've spoken before about this as we face this howling gale of the wind. I've spoken before about how our concept of conservation and what it means and how it works and our best way to help it go about the natural process has become broader and broader as the years have gone by, and it's a constantly shifting and changing knowledge. So one of the things I spoke about is the start of the Kruger Park, where completely well-intentioned, just with the best of intentions, conservation-oriented, the technique was to shoot all the predators. That was how you went about protecting a natural environment, was to get rid of all of the things that will eat the antelope. Wild dogs included, wild dogs, lions, leopards, none of them were welcome here initially. And that's such a hard concept for us now to rack our brains around, but at that time, that was how they understood. They thought they were doing a good thing for the environment. So are we the only thing that has a negative impact? No. But for the most part, the balance of nature out here, if left to its own devices, has reasons for doing things that we don't necessarily understand or comprehend. And I hope, Safari Dean, that answer sort of makes sense. I kind of know what I mean. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to answer over the space of numerous drives. But yes, we are definitely by far the most destructive species out here. Now, it is only the Microcoroptera order in this particular part of the world that are insect-eating bats, just to go back to that discussion about them. And James's hat, that's an interesting username. Can I just confirm that that is in fact a username dedicated to James's hat with the gaffer tape holding it together? I'm going to work on that assumption. James's hat, at RIP James's hat. People are clearly devastated by the loss of James's hat. I think he might be a little bit as well, though he hasn't mentioned it. He's kept very stoic about it. James is a very stoic individual, but I think deep down he is most upset and feeling a little bit bereaved. Right, back to the actual question from James's hat. James's hat has learned to talk, which is impressive. Can a bat echolocate whilst it has food in its mouth? And that's a really good point. I think not would be my guess, but because they tend to focus on insects, those insect mouthfuls get swallowed so fast. Because of course echolocation is the process of emitting high-pitched squeaks that then bounce back. The sound waves bounce back towards the bat and are intercepted by its tremendously enormous ears. And the bat then builds up a picture in its mind of what it is faced with and what is around it. But of course, if they've got a mouthful of food, then they can't open their mouths to. But I suppose, to be honest, you don't need to open your mouth in order to create a sound. We can hum, we can without having to open our mouths. So they probably, I've changed my mind, they probably can echolocate. Oh, everybody hold on, this is a bit of a bumpy stretch of road here. Yes, I think they probably can echolocate with a mouthful of food. Interesting fact about bats, we spoke about it with giraffe earlier today on the sunrise safari, and the fact that their heads are held in that upright position by a tendon, so that the naturally relaxed position of a giraffe's head is upright. Now the same applies to bats, because imagine if they had to concentrate on clinging to a rafter or a roof beam or the walls of a cave, and had to think about holding their fists closed or their hands closed the whole time. And so, in fact, the natural relaxed position of a bat's hand or foot is locked, is closed, like a clenched fist. And they actually have to tense muscles in order to release the object that they are holding, so that they don't fall on their heads when they sleep. As we drive further into the night, let's find out how Mr. Henry's journey is going and if he is mourning his hat.
Looking for bats is an extremely ambitious thing to be doing, especially at this time of the night, and especially given that if she does find some bats, of course, Jeandre is going to pull off some fairly impressive camera work in order to A, let you see them, and B, let you see them without being sick. Anyway, here we are. We're in the Mawati drainage line. What I would like you to notice when we turn off the vehicle is that it is relatively sheltered in here. And this is a good place for an animal who wants to be out of the wind to be for the course of the night. So that's why we came down here. We are going to have to get out of it, though, because it is... I'm just listening. But I hear nothing. It is not good for signal. So we're going to pull out of here. and make our way sort of to the eastish. Eastish. Can you be eastish, Bryan?
To a degree.
To a degree, yes. Anyway, we're now on Battalier Road. So those of you who do have Google Maps, you can probably tell precisely where that is. I'm sure one day we'll be able to send you a GPS reading of precisely where we are, which might interest some of you. Now, there are a vast array of different accents that are available all throughout South Africa. Bryan, would you say the following, please? Would you say, kill 5 fish on a hill?
Kill 5 fish on a hill.
Right, there we go. Bryan is from Johannesburg. He is educated at an English-speaking private school, and so he speaks with a fairly neutral South African accent. Now, were you to hear Kirsten McLennan-Smith saying that, you would think she was from a different country entirely, possibly even a different planet. And we've got a question all the way from Belgium. Steph, you want to know whether I am South African. I am absolutely South African, Steph. I seem to have developed a slightly English twang. To the extent that one of our viewers was so offended by me once that she referred to me as that stupid Brit, which I thought was a little unkind. But anyway, that's each to his own, and each can is allowed their own opinion. But I am from South Africa, yes. Thank you, Steph. And you'll notice, I tell you what you should listen out for, is listen out for Sam's accent when he's next on camera. He's from Cape Town. That means that he speaks a bit more slowly than those of us from Johannesburg, because in Cape Town, well, living in Cape Town is like having a full-time anesthetic, basically. And people just do things a lot slower there. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world, of course. So, of course, I think they take the time to appreciate things possibly more than those of us who've grown up in Johannesburg. So you'll notice that about the way he speaks. A very nice, it's a very pleasant way of speaking, actually. It's quite lilting, the way Sam speaks. Brent Leo Smith is of indeterminate accent simply because he speaks it so fast, he sounds sometimes a little bit like an AK-47. Jamie's got she's got an interesting one. It's also very like, I think, probably like Bryan and mine, Johannesburg. But it does have a bit of British twang as well, because she was educated in Cambridge. So if you listen carefully to her every so often, she's got a little bit of an English twang, and then she's got a pretty South African accent in that her vowels are quite flat. Not as flat as Kirsten's, of course, but they are quite flat. Thank you for that, Steph. I do find accents a fascinating thing, and unless you're from a particular country, it's often difficult to tell the difference between the two. And I'm sure that if you were a German, you can probably tell the difference between a Munich accent and a Berlin accent and a Bavarian accent. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference at all. And also in South Africa, of course, much of the black population have come from 8 different sort of tribal groupings, and they also have distinct accents. So there are lots of distinct accents all over South Africa. That stupid Brit, indeed. This is wonderful news. I can't believe it. Those of you who've been watching for a while know that the crab, Pinchy Whiner, had his nest lain upon by a buffalo, and we don't know, or we didn't know until right this moment, whether he was alive or not. Well, he's found himself some kind of cell phone signal, and he's just sent through a tweet. We've just had a tweet from Pinchy Whiner to say that he is alive and well, and all is okay. Thank you very much, Pinchy. I'm most impressed that you're able to tap with your 10 legs. Right, Jamie has got some genuine biology to show you. We'll carry along here.
I'm just going to sit quietly for 1 second so you can hear the noises while we look at the scrub hare of what's moving behind us. Just listen to this. I'm not sure how clearly you can hear it. Unfortunately, we caught right at the tail end. Ooh. Those of you who will be watching the Djuma Dam camera, keep your eyes peeled because there is an entire breeding herd of buffalo on its way to you. And one somewhat intimidated scrub hare that decided that the best solution would be to hide next to the guarri bushes until all the buffalo have moved past. Oh, there we go. Feeling a little bit better. And as he dashes off, the buffalo all seem to have gone. I'm going to take my light off him for now. He's feeling a little bit scared. So we'll move on, find other nocturnal creatures. Is that a butterfly, Jeandre, or is it it's a butterfly, isn't it? It's not a chameleon.
Butterfly.
It's a butterfly. It was a little bit too much to hope for. Jeandre and I just got very, very confused by the presence of a bird, a bush shrike in a jackalberry tree, obviously settling down for the night and going to sleep. But what was so confusing about it was we couldn't really get a handle on exactly what this thing was. It looked like a giant piece, like a lemon, hanging from a tree, or some kind of orange or lemon or something like that was dangling out, because we couldn't see the head or the feet or any sort of defining features. It was just this round ball of fur, of feathers. Took me a long time to figure out what that was. That, by the way, was an African vagrant, that moth. Or that butterfly, sorry, it's a butterfly, it's not a moth. And the reason why I stopped was I was looking for chameleons at night. That being said, it's a little bit too cold for them now. Unlikely to see a chameleon out and about. Bush babies, on the other hand, are a distinctive possibility, as are all other manner of nocturnal creatures. Tomorrow morning is going to be interesting with those buffalo heading across towards the waterhole. If James's theory is correct, and it could well be, it wouldn't be the first time we've lost the Nkuhumas for days in that block. But if he's correct, those buffalo are heading straight towards them. But we'll have to wait for the sunrise safari to find out if anything occurs on this dark, cloudy, windy night. We've spoken a lot about the intimidation that the animals face when it comes to facing a night ahead like this one. Their senses are robbed. They can't hear properly. They can't smell properly. They can't see. Well, they can. They can see a little bit. Okay, next question from a viewer. James Henry's old hat would like to know if snakes such as mambas. I'm having a good chuckle. I'm amazed at what a character James's hat has become. It's amazing. I really enjoy that. And I think he must as well. At least it must be one of the most famous hats in the world. But are mambas and other such snakes more active at night? Oh, bugs are very active at night. There are certain snake species that are nocturnal. Mambas are not really one of them. They are best adapted to active hunting during the daylight hours. Cobras are the same, and most of the ambush snakes. That being said, if there's an explosion, for example, of termites around them, then they might come out and start snacking on those. But for the most part, no, they're diurnal animals. The night belongs to snakes like the centipede eaters, the purple glossed snakes, a lot of the burrowing snakes that come out during the evening hours. Unfortunately, this evening would be a little bit chilly even for them. It is rather cold, and as you know, snakes are exotherms. No, yes, exotherms. You know, that's the sort of the new terminology. Rather than calling them cold-blooded, which is a very deceptive name. So they're not cold-blooded, they are exotherms. They are reliant on external factors to help to moderate their body temperature, and thus are far more sensitive to cold than we are. Although I must say, I feel cold pretty solidly. So the chances of a snake being out at this time of evening in this kind of weather is relatively unlikely for that respect. But yes, there are nocturnal species of snakes. The mambas are not included amongst those. One thing generally about the wind is that a lot of the animals come towards these open clearings, open areas, where they can see a little bit further and it's a bit harder to sneak up on them and they'll feel a bit safer. But so far, Quarantine Clearings does not have any animals on it, which is interesting. I find that quite fascinating. Usually at this time of night, we see a lot of them coming through. It does make me wonder, it might have been the elephants moving in the area that have scared them off. And as I scout about for chameleon, one last question from Elizabeth, who would like to know if chameleons hibernate. Hibernate? Oh, my word, what is wrong with me today? I'm sorry, hibernate. They do not hibernate, they go into a process known as estivation. So hibernation is for cold, it never gets quite cold enough out here. Estivation is a very similar process, slow the metabolism down and then go into that state, but it's due to the dryness rather than due to the cold. So it's estivation rather than hibernation, and they can come out of it quite easily on a nice warm winter's day to come and bask for a little bit. All right, we've come to the end of our sunset safari. The sun is long set. No, this is getting ridiculous now. Set, and the light is gone. I'm going to go home and I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to try and recover my powers of speech and my ability to form words without mixing them up in terms of letters. Thank you, Jeandre, for all of your fantastic camera work. Most importantly, thank you to all of you, the viewers, for joining us, for asking your questions and contributing your opinions. We really do appreciate it. Well done to Rebecca and to Kirsty in Final Control, and have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I will send you back over to James and his new hat. Cheers.
Just looking for things, everybody. Searching into the bush to see if we can find anything. Bryan, do you see anything? What? Oh dear. Hello? Sorry about that. We went through a deep and sorry about that. But we're back. So that was a bad spotlighting technique, so should you ever have cause to come on the safari, and I hope that most of you will have cause one day to come out here and you get handed the spotlight. Indeed, if you were to come on the safari with me, I would definitely give you the spotlight, because driving and operating it at the same time is an irksome task. This is how you should do it. Gently washing from side to side. Not so, Bryan. What is that? I saw some eyes. I suspect a scrub hare. Possibly just a flash. Just a flash of nothing. No. So Jamie did show you a scrub hare, everybody, so don't worry. Oh, we did also see a small scrub hare, believe it or not, and the waterbuck, which didn't even bother to get up. It was fast asleep. Much the same as Tingana, lying in some thick bush and hoping to escape the worst of the wind. If I was an animal out here and it was so windy, I would like to be a waterbuck, because they've got those lovely thick coats. Right, we're going to do our very last minute of this show on the dam wall here. Off to the right-hand side, you can see the shining light that looks over the dam, and you can possibly see the wash that is cast by looking at the Djuma Dam cam. I'm going to say a big thank you to Bryan today.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Bryan. Well done. A good job. And a big thank you to Rebecca, whose voice is in my ear currently, telling me we have 30 seconds left. Thank you to Kirsten, and on the other vehicle, Jamie and the foot. And the last people to thank, of course, are all of you who take your time to talk to us, which is wonderful. And I must just thank you for all of the wonderful questions and comments you sent today. We will see you tomorrow at 0600 during the breaking African dawn. Until then, stay safe and happy. Bye-bye.